Worst I've done? Cleaned out a tuba player's instrument locker. Everything seemed mundane, lots of trash paper, etc., nothing disgusting. Pull his concert tuba out, inspect, it's fine. Pull the sousaphone out, open the case, and dear God that smell. There was an Arby's bag with a half-eaten sandwich and some fries in the instrument. We sent his parents that cleaning bill. Worst I've heard of? Some students were apparently trying to brew wine in a bottle in their locker. I don't know what they put in there, but a gallon jug burst in their locker. You could smell as for the rest of the week in the locker banks. In primary school, the boy whose cubby-hole locker was next to mine had a huge crush on the horse girl in my class. You know what I mean, horse stickers, horse backpack, has a favorite horse, Clydesdale, etc. He chewed gum every day and he started working on a horse sculpture made entirely of gum, in his locker. I watched him adding to it, and wow, horses are hard. He struggled the most making slender horse legs made of gum to hold up a horse body, and I guess didn't think of popsicle sticks or pencils as a base. We were 6 or 7. He spent a few months on the sculpture and it became pretty big. But it didn't really look like a horse, it had huge legs and a weird droopy face. He gave it to her during class without an explanation and she screamed. I worked as a resident assistant in college. On the last day before Christmas break, my colleague and I were checking all the rooms to ensure they were empty before we locked the dorm. In one resident's empty room, sitting on the desk, was a small plastic container that should have been transparent, but was fogged up from the inside. Even weirder, it looked like there was a shadow inside it, like something was moving. We opened the lid and, after waving away the pungent smell, found 4 tiny gerbils desperately clawing at the container's sides to get out. Their bedding was filthy, and they had no water. One of them was even licking the sweaty condensation off the sides just to not die of thirst. It was late at night and we had to go, so we took the gerbils to the campus police station. The gerbils were given some water, and the attending officer promised to get them proper help once things opened in the morning. When we confronted the resident about it after students returned in January, he said he didn't want them anymore and figured that the janitors would come by to eventually throw them away. We disciplined him for violating the no pets policy, but he deserved so much worse than Portal to Narnia. Okay, not quite. On my last day of high school 20 years ago, they started to demo an older part of the school that had asbestos. The older part was adjacent to the newer part, and in particular the bank of lockers I was in directly backed onto it. We never thought or cared about it because the older part was small compared to all the newer, built-up sections that we then used. Anyway, classes let out and we were milling around for a while. Finally I went to collect my things and clean out my locker. When I opened it up, to my surprise, the back of the locker was loose, like it was now a door to something beyond it. My 2 adjacent locker mates were in the same boat, as that metal panel spanned all our lockers. We made sure no teacher was around, then without much effort we kicked the panel into the space behind the locker. It opened to reveal an old classroom, almost perfectly preserved at the end of whatever school year had been its last use. There were old textbooks, posters, and tons of dust. We even found a notebook, nothing notable in it, that we were certain belonged to the dad of one of our friends. It would line up time-wise. Anyway, we spent probably 30 minutes exploring in there before one of us, don't know who, reminded about the reason for the demolition, and we got the hell out. It kinda reminded me of some scenes in the Silent Hill movie, but without the same fear level. Oh, this just gave me a flashback to college. My roommate for a year had a John would keep a box of tampons next to the toilet. She'd put one in and put the applicator back in the box. With blood on it. By the end of her period, the box would be full of blood-stained cardboard applicators, with blood spatters on the outside of the box. And then the box would sit there, for a whole month, full of bloody applicators. As a student, I left a half-eaten tuna sandwich in my locker after school. I realized it when I got home. I thought nothing of it, because I could get it the next day and throw it out. Unfortunately, that night I was rushed to the hospital with appendicitis. Teachers, principal, staff, whoever opened my locker, adjacent to the cafeteria, to get my school books so I could work while recovering at home, and they found the over tuna sandwich. Apparently, students were complaining about a bad smell on that side of the cafeteria, and the staff told my mom that they had never smelled anything worse once they opened my locker. Oops. When I was in high school, my friends and I used to hang out at this one particular restaurant, Casey's. And every time we went to it, we would steal one item off the table. We took placemats, forks, spoons, cloth napkins, menus, and the grand prize, a bottle of Heinz ketchup, which my friend Matt smuggled out stuffed down the front of his pants. Matt had a secret second locker at school. He stashed all of the stolen items in this locker, which became known as the Casey's locker. Well, that spring the weather turned hot. Really, really hot. Hot enough so that this 3/4 full bottle of ketchup exploded inside the locker. The entire locker and everything in it was painted in ketchup. It looked like a crime scene. Matt took everything out of the locker and threw it all away. Then he pocketed the lock, closed the door, and walked away. The hot weather continued. The ketchup began to cook inside the locker. Pretty soon the entire hallway started to stink with the fetid aroma of rotting tomato and vinegar. The teachers couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So they commenced a locker search, down the hallway, one by one. And of course, discovered the Casey's locker. It turns out that slowly cooked ketchup inside an enclosed space welds itself to metal exceedingly well. The locker had to be sanded clean, and then repainted. No one ever discovered who was the owner of the Casey's locker, but that smell lingered until school let out for the summer. Not a teacher but somebody caught these popular girls, Claire and Olivia, having dildos and magic wands in their backpack. Evidently they were going into the bathroom and using them on this other popular girl, Ananika, to get her to orgasm in the girls' locker room. Then they would all use them on each other, like 35 girls, all showing things up their vags. These were all like 12 to 13. Evidently the female gym teacher caught them in there when one of them moaned real loud. It was real obvious that their yoga pants were real wet. Also this guy named Ryan got caught with weed. We were all in middle school. I am not a teacher, but I think I qualify to answer. This was back in elementary school where I was still the bad kid. I wasn't actually that bad of a person, but when people gave me a bad look I immediately turned around and asked then what their FC King problem was. I have 4 referrals with the school on my record. This guy kept bullying me, pushing me against the wall, forcing me to give him my lunch money, etc. And as the crazy kid I was, I would get mad and either fight back or seek revenge. I had one friend who was also being bullied by him, and we got together and hatched a plan. At lunch we had these disgusting chicken sandwiches that looked like they were dipped in some dirty water and left in a hot car on a 90-degree day. My friend told me that his locker is always unlocked and we pooled all our money together to buy an extra chicken sandwich with our lunch. Then we would take the chicken sandwich out of the cafeteria and into the bully's locker, which was empty. At the end of the year, we probably spent over $300 on these chicken sandwiches. The teacher asked the class to go and empty their lockers. And when the bully opened his locker to 50+ nasty moldy chicken sandwiches, his expression was worth all the money we pooled together and more. I must confess, I did end up turning myself in after he moved out of the school system and I did get 2 weeks of community service. However, the guy's locker was unlocked, so the school couldn't do anything illegal or charge any other action. I have grown a lot since, but I still remember this funny moment. When I was in high school, my friends and I used to hang out at this one particular restaurant, Casey's. And every time we went to it, we would steal one item off the table. We took placemats, forks, spoons, cloth napkins, menus, and the grand prize, a bottle of Heinz ketchup, which my friend Matt smuggled out stuffed down the front of his pants. Matt had a secret second locker at school. He stashed all of the stolen items in this locker, which became known as the Casey's locker. Well, that spring the weather turned hot. Really, really hot. Hot enough so that this 3/4 full bottle of ketchup exploded inside the locker. The entire locker and everything in it was painted in ketchup. It looked like a crime scene. Matt took everything out of the locker and threw it all away. Then he pocketed the lock, closed the door, and walked away. The hot weather continued. The ketchup began to cook inside the locker. Pretty soon the entire hallway started to stink with the fetid aroma of rotting tomato and vinegar. The teachers couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So they commenced a locker search, down the hallway, one by one. And of course, discovered the Casey's locker. It turns out that slowly cooked ketchup inside an enclosed space welds itself to metal exceedingly well. The locker had to be sanded clean, and then repainted. No one ever discovered who was the owner of the Casey's locker, but that smell lingered until school let out for the summer.